Hey guys, welcome to this edition of the Cover One Buffalo post game show. I'm your host Aaron Quinn, and here with me, joining me is Erik Turner. Man, Erik, I would ask you how you're doing, but I don't even know if I want to know. But how are you, my man?
Not too bad, man. Hey, it's the first game of the year. We expected to have some lumps this season. They came in a lot quicker and a lot earlier than I thought to start the season.
Yeah, there were plenty of lumps to go around, and I agree. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch about definitely assuming there would be some type of a regression this year, but that today was a little bit more than what I would expect as a regression. Just that I'm glad we got this out of the way here in week one, and hopefully we don't see any more like this for the rest of the year. Even though I think there's going to be some tough sledding here throughout the year, and today was maybe an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, talk about tough sledding. We're rooting for Peterman. The team went forward and named him the starter early, gave him a whole week to prepare against a very tough defense out down in Baltimore. And you know what? He came up again and lame. I mean, it just there was no explanation for the way he played today. I know some of it's going to be blamed on the offensive line. I know some of it's going to be blamed on receivers. But what it comes down to, as it typically does, whether you win or lose, it's a team game, and all cylinders weren't clicking. I mean, and it started with Peterman, but kind of the way I let off the Bengals game. I'm going to start off. Again, one of the first things you look at the end of a game as a coach is penalties. And the Bills had 10 penalties for 100 yards. And I don't care what type of talent you have or the lack of talent you have, no matter what, as a team, you cannot win by killing yourselves. Not only did they, commit 10 penalties for 100 yards, they had turnovers. They gave up sacks, and you know what? The defense was just on the field too much. And 35 minutes of time of possession for Baltimore is going to kill your defense again, no matter how much talent you have.
Yeah, no, penalties is a big one. And this is something that for a few years now I've been arguing because it comes up quite a bit whenever the coach talks about penalties. Some of the local talking heads will bring up, well, there's good teams that commit penalties and win. And the fact is, this isn't a good team. And even the good teams, it hurts them. Penalties are never a good thing. So talking about that just being coach speak, sometimes coach speak is true. And so I have no problem with the coach talking about penalties, but you can't keep talking about it every single press conference. At some point, it's got to get cleaned up. It seems to be something that's happening all the time. And these aren't just ticky-tacky penalties that are popping up, because I don't mind some of those, the 50-50 calls that can go either way. But specifically the one that Bills stop them, they're getting ready to punt, Bills go off sides, or neutral zone infraction there, and it goes for a first down. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that just totally kills games. You can't have penalties that your defense stops a drive and then you put the offense right back out there. That's the type of stuff that, you're already down by 20 and you just shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the penalty against Teron Johnson, that was kind of iffy, but those plays, that swing of the field leads to points, and I thought that call was probably kind of weak, but what it comes down to is, you just can't kill yourselves. I mean, after the first couple of drives, I mean, the defense kind of settled in, but the offense just didn't really help their teammates, and you can't have that. You got to play complementary ball in the NFL.
Yeah, and we talked about it here a little bit before we went live as well. This team, for all of its flaws and all of its faults, definitely is not built to come from behind. So it was good, like it was underneath them. Somewhat expected with a lot of the turnover at defense and, rookie middle linebacker and some young guys playing in new positions and things. So somewhat expected, but this team is not built to come back from 17, 20, nothing. They just don't have the offensive firepower to do that. If they win games this year, and when they win games this year, it's going to be built on not getting down early in games and maybe getting a lead early and then playing off a lead. But I can't see this team coming back from more than 2 scores.
No, I mean, when you talk about, as a coach with an offense that's obviously limited in talent, you got to stay ahead of the chains, right? You got to stay in those second and 4 to 6 or third and 4 to 6, not those third and 12s, third and 28s, that we kind of saw in this game. You got to stay ahead of the chains. Well, you also got to stay ahead of course, on the scoreboard. That's the most important thing. And the Bills, once they get down 17-0, I think everyone knows that there's just no way they're going to come back. This isn't the preseason, all right? This is a really good defense down in Baltimore. You just can't do that against them. They have too much talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So it was just going to be an uphill battle no matter what. You get down that many points, double digits, it's just almost impossible with this offense. And we saw this, happen the last couple of years. Once they got behind the chains or behind on the scoreboard, they just didn't have the offensive firepower to come back. And so, I see a lot of messages and comments in the chat room about, the coaches have have to answer for it. They need to be fired immediately. Whoa. I mean, that's a little strong. It's right. The first game. And again, Baltimore was one play from also making the playoffs last year. They're a pretty good defense. So we shouldn't be surprised. The biggest takeaway from this game, and I'm sure McDermott is probably going to just say it in his presser, is, you know what? They just weren't competitive. And that's the scariest thing. I didn't expect the Bills to exactly win this game. I expected them to keep it close, but did I expect them to be competitive? Absolutely. And they just simply weren't from the first play of the game to the last time the whistle blew. So it's just, that was the biggest takeaway for me from this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It felt like they just lacked something in them that we saw last year, which was, flying around to the ball, things like that. Like you said, the defense kind of got in a little bit. There's some nice hits. So I think they got a little bit more competitive as the game went on. But yeah, offensively, I just saw nothing. Talking about playing behind schedule, they were the entire game, whether it was penalties or just bad plays or just nothing seemed to click. And they just got deflated very quickly. I did think once they made the switch to Allen, it seemed like there was a little bit of energy that got inserted into him, but that didn't last very long. That got drained back right away. And when a team can just drain your team's energy, it's not going to make for a good day in the NFL. But as far as the coaches taking too much, I mean, yeah, you want to hold them accountable and you want McDermott to get up all week and answer the questions and the tough questions about this game. But guys, come on, McDermott, this team could win between 1 and 3 games and McDermott's not getting fired. I mean, he's easily earned himself this next year and the year after that. This team is all about 2019 and 2020. Let's not kid ourselves of who this team is. We all want to see him win and we want to see him be better than this performance was, but we really got to, self-reflect a little bit after a game like this and remember what this team is, and that maybe all those national guys that we yell at on Twitter aren't totally wrong maybe about what we should be expecting from this team.
Yeah, and you hear the mantra, trust the process. And I know, that type of coach speak is one of those things that a lot of fans, after a loss like this, they just call BS. But they come up with these sayings for a reason, because, and it's times for like these that you actually go out and use it, and it becomes important to when you do self-reflect, as you mentioned, Aaron, because obviously most of us expected some type of regression, right, Aaron? So when they say trust the process, I think that rings true now more than ever, because you got to have faith in what their vision is. And I know, again, this is hard in the emotion. The game just ended within the last 10, 15 minutes, and it's hard to trust that process and what they have put on the field today. But you gotta think long term, and I think that this staff and this regime has a plan, and it's pretty obvious if you step back and look at it outside of the bad loss today down in Baltimore. So I don't think the coach should be fired. I do think that they are going to have to tweak some things because, when it comes to Vontae Davis not being able to start, when it comes to Teron Johnson getting banged up, and then having to use their third safety, Raphael Bush, as a slot corner, there's going to be some things that are going to need to change. And, of course, to get back onto the offensive side of the ball, what do they do with Josh Allen, Aaron? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts haven't changed this whole time. And as the first half played out, I really didn't think, I said it in the Slack channel, I didn't think McDermott would make the switch. Peterman threw that other interception, and I think it forced McDermott's hand. I think McDermott would have really liked to just stick with Peterman throughout that game. If he doesn't throw that pick, he just keeps sticking with him because that's a McDermott kind of move. He likes to stick with his guys, but Peterman really forced the hand here and putting Allen in. But as that game was playing out, man, I just looked at that article that I wrote a few weeks back in my case for starting Josh Allen, and it just felt more and more like Peterman was making the case for me of why Allen may be the better option. to win games and just to get Allen out there. But you saw Allen making some plays with his leg, extending drives, doing things that Peterman just can't seem to do when things go poorly. Some of the throws that Allen made too, I know we'll get a chance to watch those back. Some of the fastballs that he threw, just things that Peterman just isn't going to be able to do at any point. I feel bad for Peterman a little bit. I don't think he is as bad as he's showing, but I mean, the tail of the tape doesn't lie, right? Like that's what everybody says, and all the tape right now is bad.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not going to end there either, Aaron. With his outing, with Peterman's outing again, the national media is going to jump all over McDermott, is going to jump all over Peterman and his play. And again, you're right, rightfully so, because it's been atrocious. And so he's going to be the butt end of the joke for probably a long time. And probably, if this staff goes to Josh Allen from here on out, I mean, that really could be the type of game that ends a guy's career in the long run. You know what I'm saying? He may never be a starter. He's always going to be a backup, and he may have lost his opportunity if the team does eventually turn to Josh Allen in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, opportunities are very quick unless you are a top tier guy in this league. You don't have a lot of opportunity to get on the field, especially at the quarterback position. I think that they've given him more than enough. He's made more than enough mistakes for the coaches to just say, you know what, we got to go in a different direction. Maybe this guy just doesn't have it when the lights come on. I'd like to know your thoughts though, as a guy that's coached offense and has coached, and you watch a lot of film. Has Josh Allen, or I guess really, has Nathan Peterman done enough on tape to just say we can't continue to put this guy out here? Because to me, that seems like the kind of thing that loses a team if you continue to put a guy out there that just continues to make mistakes and puts the team in bad situations. Has Josh Allen taken the reins for week 2 already, or do you think they have to kind of talk that out this week?
No, I think it's going to be talked out, and of course, as McDermott says, they're going to look at the film. But I mean, turning the ball over is priority number 1. I mean, that's why Tyrod Taylor was, that was one of his pluses when he was with us the last few years. So if you have a young guy that is not only, it doesn't really bring too much as far as passing the ball down the field or explosive plays in Nathan Peterman, and he's turning the ball over. I mean, how are you going to move the ball? I mean, we saw that in that first quarter and pretty much that first half. The offense was atrocious. I mean, they didn't have a first down in the first half. So they're going to have to seriously look at that because, again, it comes down to the team. And as you mentioned, they could very well lose that team. Today, second half there, yes, it looked like there was a little spark when Allen came in, but that's, it's typically the case when you make a quarterback change. But when he was playing, it was like, again, that film, how important is it? When it's playing against, backups, second and third stringers, and, it's a blowout. There's only so much you could take from that as far as context goes. But sure. I don't think Allen seized anything. I think Peterman is actually, like you said, kind of making that case where it wouldn't hurt to just start playing Josh Allen. Because what if this happens, 3 times in the next 3 weeks where they're blown out in the first half? Well, guess what? And Josh Allen's going to keep doing mop-up duty. Well, then why don't you give him the experience of starting and preparing for a game from the start?
Yeah, that's a great point because that's the last thing I think you want to do with them is throw them out there, mop up duty continuously to get kind of beat up at the end of a game. That's not a good position to learn from. I keep pointing back to, I think we've said it before here, the Bears are a great example of what the Bills' future looks like, in my opinion, where they had a really rough year. They got their quarterback, had a really rough year, had a ton of money to spend. I think that's what Bills fans can look forward to for next year for what this process that they're talking about looks like. But the one mistake I think the Bears made was continuing to go with Glennon. I think Fox kept Glennon in too long, and he had performances like we're seeing from Peterman right now. And Fox stuck with his guy, and I'm hoping that McDermott saw that example and maybe looks at that example and says, you know what? It's a shame they didn't get Trubisky in earlier and get him some of the reps so that this year he was more prepared. That's my hope anyway, and that's what they do with Josh Allen here moving forward, because I do agree with people. There's going to be some tough defenses that they face, and I think Allen's going to struggle at times, but I'd much rather watch Josh Allen struggle and learn than Peterman, because I've lost all hope that Peterman can be an NFL starting caliber quarterback.
And I think when Allen came in, the thing that you saw, again, it's versus backups, most of it was. But even with some of those backup pass rushers, the Tim Williams and those guys that were still in Judons, still coming after Allen, the thing that you saw him do was he kept his eyes downfield. He was working through progression. So he's not like David Carr when he was, getting throttled back there when he came into the league. He has decent presence in the pocket. I think he's further along in that department than most fans would or analysts would agree right now, because honestly, he hasn't let that pressure and those sacks really get to him. Now, has he held the ball a little too long? Yeah. But again, when you look at each individual play and it's in its context, you're going to look down the field and see a lot of those guys probably aren't open when we look at the all-22 footage. So I think that's something that, the staff is going to have to continue to evaluate, because, as much as the offensive line has struggled, the quarterbacks have today held the ball too long, in my opinion. And some of those sacks, I'm sure once we look, at the film, will be attributed to that as well. So, but if that's going to be there all year, Aaron, who's the best player? Who's the most athletic player? Who's the most physically gifted player to help you extend some plays and maybe get an explosive play or two, to help your offense stay on the field and not allow Baltimore to just control the clock and these teams that are coming up in the next month to control the clock.
Yeah, and William Swan here in the chat box says that, and it's something that we've been talking about a lot. I have to go with Josh. He has the perfect. He has to play perfect. Right, the play has to be perfect for Peterman, but that Josh Allen can ad-lib, and that's kind of something that we've just been really talking about. That, and I'm a big believer that I don't think this offense has enough talent, all 11 positions, to move the ball down the field with dinks and dunks and not shoot themselves. Because if you're going to have a team like that that's going to move the ball with the dink and dunk offense, you can't have penalties on first down. You can't make a good play and then get it called back. You have to play perfect. And the Bills just don't have that team to play perfect for 7-minute drives, 80-yard drives. It's a lot more difficult than I think people make it appear to be. And like that, you take that first drive that the Ravens had, and that's a really impressive drive. I don't care what defense they're going against, but I don't think the Bills have the talent to do that with any type of consistency. So with that all being said, I think Josh Allen is the kind of guy that it does have that ability to ad-lib. You saw him, he looked dead to rights on one of those sacks, and he's just a strong, big guy, and he shook off the sack, and the play didn't end up developing into anything, but he has that ability to just keep things alive, make some plays with his legs, and then he's got the arm to just rocket the ball down the field and make some plays there too, even when things have broken down. So it might be ugly at times, even with Allen, and he is probably going to struggle, but I think that big playability that he gives your offense some opportunity to do something.
Yeah, and I saw all over Twitter today, and even in our chat box just now, Bills fans are still comparing to Tyrod Taylor. And I'll say this, by playing Allen, you're going to go right back to that formula of playing on offense. And that is, again, relying on outside of the play, outside of the structure of the play type of football. And, right now, it's working right now in Cleveland. It looks like the Browns are tied up with the Steelers right now in overtime. And, Taylor's his normal self, 15 of 38 for 197 yards, a touchdown, interception, 8 rushes for 77 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, if you switch to Allen, you got to live with the growing pains. Obviously, he's a rookie, but you also going to have to live with performances like that probably. I mean, you saw him when Allen came in. Some of the first few plays is he's dropped back to pass. He saw the middle of the field, the middle linebacker vacate, and he just, ran up the middle and got some yardage. Same thing, bounced out to the left-hand side on another pass drop back. So maybe that's a formula, that we have to live with this year. It's something we had to live with last year when the Bills didn't have similar. You didn't have the talent on the outside, or even, and we had probably a better offensive line last year, which is, saying a lot with the way they ended last year. But you're going to have those sacks kind of like Tyrod Taylor had last year, 40 plus sacks, and a bunch of them were on him. You're going to have that from Allen. So, hey, if they make the decision, go to Allen, that's what you need to expect,
Yeah.
But in the end, Aaron, who gives you the best chance to win? Maybe that's Allen. And we've been making the case here, for the last couple months in regards to that. And I know, as you mentioned earlier, you shared that article that you wrote about that. And that was one of the main philosophies and thoughts behind that.
Yeah. And here's one thing, though, and we're going to talk about quarterback, I'm sure, all week long here, because it's obviously going to be the hottest topic. I'm sure McDermott's press conference right now is just full of those questions. But really, to me, the thing that stands out is I don't know whoever goes back there, we need more, right? The running game, nothing, non-existent this game. Even Shady had a couple good runs that get called back. You could tell he was frustrated that nothing was popping. And when he would get something going, it gets called back. Shady's the type of runner that needs to create a rhythm, just unable to create a rhythm today. We can't have that no matter who's back there at quarterback. Shady's got to get going. And then outside of Shady, I didn't hear Charles Clay number get called at all today. He needs to be a part of this offense. Dable's got to find ways to get the quarterback to get him the ball at some point. And then a guy that we really got to talk about here, and we talked about before this show went on, is Kelvin Benjamin, man. I made a case for him on one of the podcasts to get paid before the season started, and I am glad that Bean did not do that, because the guy that was out there on the field looked like a very lazy, apathetic, just guy that didn't even want to be there, had a couple of drops. Humphrey made a really good play on one of the drops, but he just seemed to be going through the motions. He doesn't even put his hands up for balls sometimes. He's just, I don't know if it's just his body language or whatever it is, if I'm looking too much into it, but what are you seeing out of Kelvin Benjamin right now, man?
I see the very same thing, and I call his play, especially in that first half, is Bush League. I'm sorry, you got to have more effort than that, and he just didn't have it. His body language was terrible. I know Peterman missed him on that one interception, and he missed him bad, but you cannot show that body language to your teammates. You have to go pick him up. I know it's hard to do, but it's one of those things. And then even on the second interception, when he's running, they sent a 3-by-1 set out, and they isolated Benjamin. It was pretty obvious they were going to him. And, he ran, I think it was like a 5-step slant or post. And he just, the pass was a little off, but it seemed like he gave up on the route. And I'm sorry, you're just not going to make, money that way in this league. You can't put that type of film out there. And I'm with you. I mean, I'm glad that, no premature moves were made as far as signing him. And that's something we can talk about, down the line. But that type of behavior is not going to be tolerated. And I hope that the coaching staff, when they get into those individual meetings and when they get to those team meetings, that they put that on, because that's Bush League play, and I will not have that on my team.
I think they're going to, because if McDermott is the guy that he claims to be and that he preaches that he is, and we have to take his word for it, right? We don't know what really goes on in the meetings, but in that embedded series that they did, I think it was maybe the first one where they talked about the standard, and he showed a play. We didn't get to see what the play was or who the guy was, but he showed a play, and he paused it and he said, "This effort, that's not what we want." That's when he got into the talent and habits thing and calling guys out. And he said, if you're going to play with this effort, there's really no room for you on this team. I think he has that same conversation when they look at this film from Benjamin, and that kept popping into my head when I saw him kind of, for better use of a word, half-assing on certain plays. And I think that he'll pull that up in front of the whole team and say, this is not to our standard. This is not what we want. And if you want to stay on this team and you want a contract from this team, buddy, you got to step up and play to our standard, because it wasn't to the standard, at least what McDermott expects. I know this team's not going to be a great team, but at least, and that's what McDermott expects from them, at least you have to come out and give all the effort for your teammates.
Yeah, effort. I mean, that's, again, you mentioned the embedded series. That's one of the things he said. If you're not putting in effort, you're not going to be on the field. And that, I'm sorry, that just annoys me so much. That is, just Bush League play. I don't want that on the team. I don't care who you are. If there's any year to, make a point of that and pull a guy off the field or make a point of it in a meeting by showing it, then you do it, because this is the type of culture you're trying to change. And you just got your asses handed to you, and you cannot leave your quarterback out to dry like that. I don't care how bad he's been playing. I don't care what other reasons or excuses you want to give me. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Get on the bench. That's what I would have done immediately after that. Immediately after that play by Benjamin, because I can't have that on my team.
No, and another great scene, if you haven't watched HBO Hard Knocks, Todd Haley had a scene where he's talking to Jarvis Landry in one of the preseason games, and one of the rookies was making a mistake and kind of half-assed a play, and he went right over to Jarvis Landry, who wasn't even playing, and was like, this is on you, because you're the leader of this unit. You're the guy that these guys are looking up to, and if you take a play off, these guys are taking a play off. So when you said this is the year to really make that point, to me, that says, I totally agree with you, right? Because there's some young guys on this team. If they see on the film, hey, well, the number one guy, Kelvin Benjamin, who's still getting targets, he takes plays off. Why can't I take plays off? And I know people say, well, these guys are pros, they can't do that. But you know what? We're still all people at the end of the day. And if Zay Jones sees that Kelvin Benjamin's not giving it his all, why do I have to give my all? He's getting more targets than me or whatever. That type of stuff is infectious. And we made fun of that Jarvis Landry rant that he had about the contagious. But you know what? When you take all the swearing and stuff away, he's not wrong. Bad habits, half-assed play, those things are contagious and other guys see it. And that's a hard habit to break once guys start doing that.
No doubt about it. And we got a question in the chat box about the offensive play calling by Dable. I mean, I thought it was, it was pretty lackluster, but I also think a lot of that had to do with the psyche of Nathan Peterman. And just, again, they weren't ahead of the chains. I mean, there was not one drive I remember where they were ahead of the chains, where they got into a rhythm. So as a play caller, you can't get too fancy. You can't get too creative because you're away at an M&T Bank Stadium. You got a shaky quarterback, and you're
in the rain.
In the rain. It just, yeah. I would have expected a little more creativity, but with all of those factors and variables, I'm not surprised that it wasn't like some amazing game plan against a really good defense. It was the game plan was probably, let's try to keep this close with the weather and by running the ball. And when you get down 17-0, well, guess what? That game plan, has to change. And there's only so much you put in a game plan as far as explosive plays and trying to create plays, because that's not the way this team is built. They're not built that way. And it showed in week one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the game plan, because all the stuff I saw you posting all preseason and breaking down what we thought they were going to do, I did not see a lot of what we thought they were going to do. And obviously you don't throw your whole bag of tricks out for week one anyway. No coaches do that, but I do agree with you. I think that what's that saying? Like, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Yeah,
so like you come out with a game plan, but as soon as you're behind the sticks and things aren't going, that game plan quickly changes and you have to adapt. And I do think he probably pulled it in a little bit, trying to get a little more conservative to try to get things going on the right track. And we were just kind of spinning our tires in the mud, unfortunately, and things never got going. So I'll hold reservations on what the offense will look like eventually, as far as the coaching goes and the game plans go. I think it was probably a hard game for them to really get anything going. And I don't know, when you're playing, like you said, when you're playing with penalties and behind the sticks the whole time, it's hard to really know what they were trying to accomplish versus what happened.
And, to kind of wrap up the offensive side of the ball, because maybe most people don't understand how you prepare a game plan. Say you have 100 plays, which is a lot. It's usually like 60 to 70 going into a game. Each of those plays is broken down or put into a certain category. Say, for example, it's by situation. So 3rd and 7 yards or more, you're going to have 12 plays, or so each situation, 1st and 10, 2nd and 4 to 6, like each situation has a certain amount of plays. So if you go into a game thinking, hey, it's going to be ugly weather, we're going to use a lot of runs and play action, hypothetically, and you get down 17-0, 26-0. Well, guess what? A lot of those plays you had scripted for or had in the game plan kind of go out the window, right? So then you have to rely on plays that are, the 3rd and longs or the 2nd and 10s, plays that fit those situations. So it's just different. It's tough as a coach, and I'm just saying that from a coach's perspective. I'm not trying to make excuses for these guys, because it don't matter what I say. They just didn't compete. But that's how you come up with a game plan. So when, I see a lot of messages in the chat box about, the game plan was bad. Well, the game plan got out of hand because of the score. So there's only so much you can call, and there's only so many plays you can run. Sometimes you're going to end up running, those explosive plays, those deeper plays that you're trying to push it into the intermediate and deep area. You're going to run those maybe 2 or 3 times because you're down now. And guess what? The defense sees it. Maybe, it was one of those plays that led to an interception. So those are the type of things that maybe the average fan doesn't realize. But when you get down, double digits and 26-0, that game plan probably gets shrunk down to maybe 25 plays that you can run now, and not even including just runs to kind of get in a manageable situation. So that's just one thing on the offensive side of the ball to kind of wrap that up. So let's switch to the defensive side of the ball, Aaron.
Yeah.
What did you see on the defensive side of the ball that maybe was good Because I know the score probably doesn't show that, Aaron, but
Right.
what were some things you saw on the defensive
Yeah,
side
so
of the
there's
ball?
plenty to not like, right? Especially right in the beginning of the game. But honestly, I think maybe the silver lining of the entire game was Tremaine Edmonds. I thought he was flying all over the field. Milano as well. I can't wait to go back and watch those two. Just keep my eyes just on them and watch, because I, at least from the first view, really liked what I saw out of both those guys. I'm sure that there's some mistakes on the film, but overall, I thought Edmonds clearly the player of the game for the Bills.
Yeah, hands down. I mean, he's a guy I'm definitely going to be breaking down because I thought that he's kind of like a basketball player, and we saw it, towards the end of the preseason. He makes one play, then he's making two, and he's making four, and then next thing he's causing turnovers. He's getting his hands on passes.
Double.
Yeah, man. He's going to be exciting, and I know someone mentioned Star Lotulelei, and was he even on the field? When you look back at this game and you see Matt Milano making plays, you see, let's see, Milano had how many tackles today? He had 8 combined tackles. You see Tremaine Edmonds with 7 combined tackles and a sack, and you see Lorenzo Alexander with 6 tackles. Well, I'm sure a bunch of those plays were help from the guys in front of those guys. So the Harrison Phillips, the Kyle Williams, and the Star Lotulelei. So don't look at the stat box when it comes to Star Lotulelei, or just because you didn't hear his name called. He's a guy that you're not going to see him show up in the stat box, but you're going to see guys like that, guys like Tremaine Edmonds having a day on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you talked about it as far as the fit for Star Lotulelei when he got here. If people want to go back and watch that video, and I thought that was a great piece that you did there, that YouTube video on, he's the kind of guy that's going to eat in the middle and eat up some of those guys. And I thought that was a great piece, because we're not going to see that in the box score. We're not going to see those things from him, but it does give those guys the ability to roam free a little bit. But the speed of those two, man, when there was a couple plays, Milano just fires through the gap, and it's like a gun goes off. It really is. And Edmonds has got that too. You just see these guys just come flying. And as those two progress, I thought, out of all the bad things that we saw through this game, if those two can progress to be the players that we think they're going to be, and that the people around the league think that they can be, that's going to be a really special unit to watch. And that's at least something worth tuning into every day. But something that I think we talked about a ton, and it got me nervous as soon as the injury report came out, and maybe something that we'll dive into a little bit deeper at some point, is what happened with Vontae Davis, because he wasn't injured all week. And then now there's some rumors out there that maybe his groin flared up, or, people are speculating that it's kind of maybe a healthy scratch. Unsure which it is. I haven't been on Twitter today, so I don't know if anybody has that information, if it was a healthy scratch or not. Either way, Vontae Davis not going to start in this game, inactive. You get Gaines out there. He gets beat a couple times early, not looking good, getting turned around. Really all the things that you warned us about, that you saw on tape with this guy. But then he's not the only defensive back making some mistakes out there, man. It looked like there was a lack of communication. Guys weren't in the spots they're supposed to be. Guys were looking at each other on plays the way Stephon Gilmore used to look at, like, hey, why weren't you there? What did you see at the first glance of the defensive backs?
I'll start with the Vontae Davis stuff that came out prior to the game. I don't think that's a good sign for Vontae Davis. I think by now his body should be ready. He's been, obviously training this whole offseason, and as the first game comes along, all of a sudden your body's not ready. I don't know if that's the actual truth. I mean, I'd like to believe it, but your body should be ready by now. I did see someone in the Slack channel mentioned that during an interview with maybe the Buffalo News, he had mentioned something about his groin, again, being, flaring up, or something flaring up. I don't know. I mean, you don't see him show up on the injury list, and then all of a sudden he's, his body's not ready. I don't know. What I saw from Gaines, honestly, I think within the game, it was kind of an emotional thing for fans. The one deep pass that he gave up, I think it was like a quarters coverage, cover 4. Flacco extended the play because there was 0 pass rush. Yeah. And the wide receiver, John Brown, uncovered it. It might have even been a 3rd down and long. I think that was that play. But I wouldn't put that totally on Gaines. Brown had worked to the post, and Gaines was going to pass Brown off to the safety in the quarters coverage. Well, the play extended. Brown shot back outside, and Gaines lost leverage for the first down. The touchdown, I mean, he was right in his hip pocket. I think that was a really good throw by Flacco. He dropped it in a bucket. Honestly, when I saw it live, I was like, man, he actually got that second foot down, and he did a good job of doing that.
Incredible play by the receiver.
It was. And I mean, it wasn't the worst coverage, but it was a really nice pass, and, it still counts. So either way, I don't think Gaines right now, based on my initial viewing, I don't think it was as bad as most fans want to paint it. But because of the issues coming into the game with Vontae Davis not being a healthy scratch, I think that kind of weighs on fans, and it, we let it get the best of us. And so it'll be interesting to go back and watch that, because it felt like on defense, Aaron, that it was kind of vanilla. It felt like it was too simple. And especially when the Ravens went into no huddle, when they went to tempo, when they're in the 2-minute drill, Flacco knew too quickly where to go with the ball. He knew what guy to look off of, and it just was too easy. Especially, you saw a bunch of those passes, right down the seam to those tight ends. And when you play a lot of cover 3, that's where you're going to have that weakness. That's where you're going to be exposed. And it felt like when they went to no huddle and tempo, that's where Flacco was going to.
Yeah, you're right. And people can say what they want about Joe Flacco, but the one thing he is a vet, and he's seen it all, right? At this point in his career, 11 years in, he's seen every defense. So if you're going to give him those looks, he's going to know exactly what to do with them. And that's right now kind of what the Bills don't have at quarterback, is a guy that's seen every look or seen every disguise, and maybe doesn't always know where to go with the ball before the play is going. And that's what Flacco does have. But yeah, those are good points about Gaines. I do think that it hurt with Johnson going down early on. I don't know what the injury ended up being confirmed with for him, but I thought he was doing pretty well up until that point, and getting in there and making some plays. One thing that I saw, and I think we'll see on tape, is the defensive outing, while it was really bad up front, and that first drive was a killer drive. That was a 80
scripted. Yeah, that was
80 plays, 7 minutes or something like that. That's going to kill you. But outside of that, I think they left a lot on the field and stuff that they were causing turnovers last year. And obviously that's hard to maintain that turnover ratio that they had at the beginning of the season last year. But some of those turnovers they were creating last year, they did get left on the field. I think there was opportunities to make some big plays still. Guys were almost in position to make a few plays, some batted balls going up in the air. Those are things that they were turning into interceptions and turnovers last year. I think that's the kind of thing that changes the direction of a game. If you move a couple of those into turnovers, maybe you're able to come back into this a little bit, but some of those balls just didn't bounce their way. I have a lot more hope for the defense, even though it was really bad early. I think that there's a lot of good film there and a lot of things that they can take away from and say, hey, these aren't terrible things for us to clean up and fix. We have another 15 games. We'll get some of this stuff corrected. Where the offense, though, I feel like that's the rework that's going to be needed to fix some of the problems that they're having over there, much more than what the defense has, even though clearly the defense gave up a ton of points.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I always come back to it's complimentary ball, right? I mean, how bad the offense had played. Again, not getting a first down in the first half. That's going to affect your, your defensive players, and having them on the field, all that, often. So I do think that Johnson, that injury is one to keep an eye on, because if for some reason Gaines becomes a starter outside and it's not Vontae Davis, you can't play Raphael Bush week in and week out as your slot corner. They're gonna
Pitts. Who's he?
I mean, I don't think he's a slot corner either. I think you have to go get one. I don't know if they can maybe somehow put someone else in outside for Gaines.
I got a guy. He's a free agent.
Who is it?
Leonard Johnson. Out there, man.
So let's hope. I mean, because it was a nice tackle. It was a form tackle by Johnson.
Yeah, it was a nice
he gets injured on that play. I thought it was a stinger, just the way he was kind of shaking it out. So I hope that they just kind of held him out because the score was out of hand, and that, once they take a look at him, they do some x-rays, that it's just a little stinger, and he'll be back next week.
Yeah, one thing I didn't really get to watch a whole lot of, obviously we saw Trent Murphy get off the ball pretty quick a few times. I want to get a better set of eyes on him, because that's a guy that we didn't see at all this summer. Did you get anything out of Trent Murphy today? See anything? I know the pass rush wasn't great today overall, but he finally got some plays and was in there. Did you see anything?
No, not really. I mean, he played a lot along the edge. I'm not even sure how many snaps he got in. But again, he's going to be one of those guys to keep an eye on when it comes to snap count, because I don't think he's 100% quite yet. But it was nice to see him out there playing. But I didn't really see too many impact plays as far as on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, so that's something I really want to look at is the defensive line. One thing that killed me, man, and I talked about in the Slack channel was Jerry Hughes was having a pretty decent day. He was making some nice moves, putting in some work. He had Flacco dead to rights, ready for a sack, and again, his arms just bounce off quarterbacks. Doesn't make the play. Flacco gets out of it. It makes it much less of a big play for the defense there. What is going on with Jerry, man? Why can't he finish these plays off? What's up?
Man, I think it's one of those things where like the carrot's right in front of him and he's just having trouble finishing now. He's having trouble just getting to it. He sees it. He so often the last year and a half, he's been right. He had the quarterback wrapped up in the preseason a couple of times and then the guy just squirts out of it. But I still thought he was very disruptive. And when we look back at the film, I'm sure it's going to show that. But finishing is another deal. But who knows? I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll start turning into sacks. Maybe if we can get a little more push from the other side, that the quarterback is not able to escape out the backside from Jerry Hughes, and those start turning into sacks and second and third and longs. But it's right there. He's right there. He just needs to work on finishing, man.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think when you look at the tape, when you get a chance to look at that Jerry Hughes was disruptive and he was putting in a day of work. And when you watch him and the moves that he does versus the other guys on the defensive line, man, the guy's got a repertoire of moves and he does some things that you don't see anybody else on this team have the ability to do, bending and getting around guys. But he's got to finish those plays. And those are the types of plays like you talked about. Like if he can get back there and create that disruption, you talked about that Gaines play where they're in quarter coverage. I know Gaines is getting killed on that one specifically, but it's hard for a defensive back to cover anyone, whether it's zone or man or whatever it is, for 4 or 5 seconds. If a quarterback breaks down that play and the guy can run around and find a spot, you're going to have a tough time keeping a hand on him. So that's why the pass, rush, it goes hand in hand. That's why the pass rush is so important, and those guys get into the guy. So I hope that we see a little bit of it on tape and that it gets a little bit better as it goes, because this defensive backfield needs as much help as they can get. They don't need to be out there for 4 or 5 seconds trying to guard anybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're right. It's going to come back to pass rush because, I mean, there's no reason that Joe Flacco should have had that much time. I know they ran a bunch of play action, so when you look at the snap to attempt numbers, I'm sure they're going to be, longer than usual. It's not like he was just getting quick passes out because of he was worried about the pass rush. No, he had all day to pass, and I don't care who's on the back end. And you kind of alluded to it. You just can't cover for 3 seconds. Heck, you can't even really cover from 2.6 to 2.7 seconds. That is above the average, from snap to throw in the NFL. So that needs to improve. And I don't care if it's, not even just getting sacks by Jerry Hughes, but creating disruption of some sort to make a guy like Flacco get off the spot, which they did a couple times. But guess what? He wasn't just throwing it away. He had so much time. He was escaping the pocket, rolling to the sideline and throwing it back across the field and throwing it away. Or he was just doing some things that Joe Flacco should have no business doing.
That Josh Allen should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. It was ugly, man. So I'm sure when we look back at some of the advanced stats of snap to attempt, Joe Flacco's numbers are going to be up there. But guess what? It worked because we didn't have the pass rush and guys were coming uncovered.
Yeah. We don't really talk about it a ton here. I thought another silver lining was the new punter had a nice day today outside of the fumble. I don't know what he was doing trying to pick that thing up, man. Just fall on the ball next time, bud. If he listens to this, just fall on that, because it looked silly and it was just a terrible play. But outside of that, had a nice day with the leg, got them into some good field position. Obviously it didn't translate into anything on the field, but that was nice to see from a guy we hadn't seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, we'll mention special teams because that was he had really good hang time. He had some really good directional punts. And of course, I mean, he almost got a break where, Taiwan Jones, if your boy could scoop that up somehow, or Andre Holmes, someone like we talked earlier about how, there were small chances and some opportunities for this team to, maybe turn a corner and get back in the game. They just blew it. And that was one of those spots.
Yeah, no, definitely. That one killed me. But I will say my boy Taiwan, man, flying down the field, he doesn't always make the tackle. And I know that frustrates people, but this, it's very hard, first of all, to run full speed down an open field and tackle some of the most talented, athletic, agile guys that the other team has. But if you can even get an arm on them and stop their momentum and change their direction, that helps that next guy come down And you saw that with Taiwan's today pretty well. Obviously, still special teams penalties happening. Can't have it. There's no place in the game for special teams penalties. All penalties are bad. But special teams ones really kill you. And so they still got to clean that up. But yeah, man, that play was definitely one of those momentum type plays that you just, you're not going to get them all, but you got to get some of them.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the NFL, it's usually decided before 3 to 4 plays.
Yeah.
Usually several inches, in a game sometimes too. So those are the type of plays where I know the game was probably out of hand by then, but those are the type of plays that will swing momentum and get you some kind of juice. You saw Tremaine Edmonds make a heck of a play, get a turnover for the offense, and then they crap the bed and can't get into the end zone there. So those little things you got to play complementary ball. You got to take advantage of those opportunities when they arrive. And today the Bills just didn't have that, and they didn't have it from the jump. And to finish special teams, because I do want to throw out a shout out to Marcus Murphy. I do think that this guy's here to stay. I think he's someone that is going to help on special teams, and I think as the season goes on, I think he's going to steal even more and more reps from Chris Ivory.
Oh, yeah. Well, clearly the number 2 back, right? Ivory didn't get a touch until the fourth quarter. So clearly there's a role for him on this team. And I can't wait till the offense starts clicking and making drives. And to that point you made earlier about the game plan and stuff like that, it's hard to have a game plan when you're going 3 and outs, because some of those plays are designed to, if we start driving the ball, what are we going to do and who are we going to get in? And I think that's really where Murphy's going to come in, is when Shady's really going and then he comes in and spells Shady. I think it's going to be real nice to see out of him. Very excited about Murphy. I thought he did a lot today as well. Kind of to wrap this up and looking ahead a little bit, bad game. A lot of stuff on tape, obviously, that the team's going to try to use to correct some things. What do you need to see this team on a week-to-week growth? What do you need to see from them? What are you expecting to see from them throughout this week leading up into the home opener?
I mean, this is one of those games you just, you take the questions and you take the beating, just like you did on the field, and you got to put it behind you. I mean, just like on any given week where you win or lose, you gotta learn from it and move on. I know that's simple coach speak, but you can't let something in the past haunt you. You got to learn from your mistakes, and I just need to see them be more competitive, because if they're not competitive on a weekly basis, if they the first quarter of the season start putting out games like that and putting out film like that, you lose an entire team. You lose the culture that you were trying to build upon from last year's playoff run. And then you're going to start hearing those chants of the front office and head coaches. Job's going to be on the line, which I don't think it should be. But it's going to get louder and louder if you are not competitive. They have to be competitive. And one thing about last year, yeah, they squeaked into the playoffs. Yeah, they got help. But they were competitive in most games. There are a couple games they took a shellacking, but you have to minimize those games, because we all know that this team isn't the most talented. You don't need national pundits to tell you that. You can see it with your own eyes. And so you just have to do things on a week-to-week basis that makes your team competitive. And today just wasn't one of those days. So you just got to watch the film, learn from it, and move on.
Yeah, and I think, this isn't the first time we've seen this Bills team, and even under Sean McDermott, take a whooping. Obviously, the whole month of November last year was terrible football, some of the worst I'd ever seen, and I didn't think it could get much worse, and then today happened. So, but one thing that I liked, and I want to urge Bills fans to kind of pump, I always say pump the brakes a little bit, was that they responded from those Saints games and some of those other games in November, and they came out and still continued to play competitive football into December against good football teams. So I don't know that this game's going to carry with them. I think that this team has some resiliency. I think they do have a good amount of leadership on this team, guys that have been in games where they got beat pretty bad. So they're going to take this one on the chin. I think they're going to use the film to try to get better. I don't think it's a great team, so I don't know how competitive they're going to be week in and week out, but I don't know that this is a sign for that this whole year is going to look like 40-point losses all year long. I mean, this was a good team they went up against. They got punched in the face and things got out of control, but I expect them to regroup, put together a game plan, and come out and give it their all again. And because I think if you don't give it your all, I don't think you're going to last on this team long. And I think McDermott's going to use some of this tape to show guys that and say, you know what, if you're doing this type of tape, you're not sticking around. We're going with somebody else. We want guys that put on at least effort on tape. So one last question here, because I got to get an answer out of you, because I don't know. Then the next time I'll talk to you, I know you're going to be busy all week, crunching film first thing in the morning. So week 2, home opener, you and I are going to be there. Who's going to come out of that tunnel as the starting quarterback for this offense? If Erik Turner is the offensive coordinator, head coach.
I mean, I feel like the staff had an idea, had a plan going into this season on when they're going to pull Peterman if he was a starter. I think they had that analyzed, and I think that more times than not, it's going to come back to, you know what, we're playing the Chargers and we're playing, the Vikings and Green Bay the first month. I think they go back to Peterman. Do I think it's the right call? No. I think Allen has won me over in regards to his mental toughness, because it's something I questioned early on. And to make a long story short, I think Allen could handle the lumps if he was thrown in there, regardless of the lack of talent on the offensive line or at the receiver position. I think he's got the mental toughness to withstand those waves and those up and downs along that side of the ball. So, but I think the safe play for McDermott and this staff is trust the process, throw Peterman back in there.
That you like punched me in the gut talking with some logic there. I don't disagree with how you're framing that argument. I do agree very much that the mental, losing confidence in that mental thing is a little bit overrated right now with Allen, because I think, like you said, he's shown the ability to have some of that mental toughness that makes me a little bit less worried. I think they're going to have a tough time though, man, when they throw that film on putting Peterman out there. Is when you talk about confidence and loss of confidence. If you want to go to this team as a whole and say we're trying to win games, but we're going to keep Peterman out there because we're scared to put Josh Allen in, I think that's a tough one to talk to a group of men about.
Sure.
And that that's where you can start to lose a locker room. But we'll see. It's going to be a really interesting week. McDermott's going to have to answer some tough questions here in the post game and all throughout the week. And we've got you covered over at cover1.net. We're going to have you covered. I know those guys are over there typing away, working hard on some of the post game articles. So expect those to drop. So if you don't already have the app, head over to the Android or iOS markets, go get the Cover One app, because as soon as those guys launch those articles, they come right to you when you have the app. You get the push notifications right to you. So you can't miss out. You get all the content that we get. Obviously, subscribe to this YouTube channel, go over to iTunes and subscribe over there. Next week, we'll have another one of the pregame, or not pregame shows, but the preview shows. Last week we had Michael Crawford on from he covers the Ravens. That was a great show. If you missed it, don't miss out on those Wednesday shows, guys, because we get you all ramped up and ready for what to expect out of this team. Because if you're like me and you're a Bills fan, you don't always get to follow all 32 teams as closely as you'd like. So we get guys that do follow these teams and have a good insight to them to help you guys get prepared for that week's game. So Erik, what do you got coming out for content this week, man? I know you're going to be drinking tons of coffee, maybe some cold brew coffee all week long, crushing film every morning. But what can we expect from you for content, man?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I think Tremaine Edmonds was one of the bright spots in today's debacle. So I'll probably be looking at him closely and breaking down some film, showing the good and the bad, because I'm sure there were some plays where, he took bad angles and whatnot, or had bad reads. So I'll be highlighting him. And then from there, I kind of let the film do the talking. And so if something, some narrative or story comes up through the film, I'll go ahead and break that down for you guys. But again, guys, week 1. I know Aaron loves to say pump the brakes. It was ugly out there today, but it's week 1, and every week you get to reset. So let's hope that the Bills go back to square one, come Monday or Tuesday when they go back to practice, and hopefully they put out a better product next week when we're at home. It's a home opener. We're all going to be there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they might not put out a better product, but we are always striving to do so. So, like we said, head over to cover1.net. And if you haven't done it already, unfortunately, you did miss out on the $10 membership, but you can still go now to cover1.net, get a membership for the premium subscription. It gets you the access to premium content, the Slack channel, the film room, premium podcast, all that good stuff. So don't take my word for it. Talk to some of the guys that have already done it. They love it. Good money spent. So head over there, do that. We appreciate all you guys coming out to join us on the show. We really can't do it without you guys and the fans keeping us going. On games like this, guys, it's hard to get over here and talk about this game. I just want to kind of crawl in a hole and not think about football for a little bit. But you guys in the chat box and the fans on Twitter help keep us going and help this continue to go on. So we appreciate you for that. And I look forward to bringing you great content all week long and heading into week 2. So thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time.